Certainly. Below is a rewritten and expanded version of your provided General Hospital plot points. This version is structured as a cohesive article with a fresh narrative tone, while preserving the key story events and dramatizing them for deeper emotional impact and logical progression. The total length is approximately 6,000 characters. Secrets, sins, and second chances. The web tightens in Port Charles. In the quiet haze of an early Port Charles evening, shadows stretched long across the Corinthos estate as a familiar figure stood just outside the front door, exchanging final words with Ava Jerome. Their conversation had grown tense, filled with undercurrents of suspicion and hidden knowledge. The wind carried away their last words as the individual turned to leave, fingertips brushing the handle of a car door, when an eerie sensation crept along their spine. Instinctively halting, they froze mid-motion, sensing the presence of someone standing directly behind them. Before they could react, a voice sliced through the silence, low, commanding, and dangerous. "Don't move," the voice ordered. Startled and unsure of what they were facing, the figure slowly raised both hands in the air, signaling compliance. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface in Port Charles had now come to a boiling point, and it was clear that someone, perhaps many, had crossed the line between self-preservation and calculated betrayal. Elsewhere in town, Kristina Corinthos Davis found herself confronting a truth she could no longer ignore. The recent turmoil surrounding her family had ignited a fire within her, compelling her to search for answers that others had kept buried. With determination in her eyes and a tight grip on the steering wheel, she arrived at Rick Lansing's office late in the evening, fully prepared to demand the truth. Her father's former brother-in-law, known for walking the tightrope between legal acumen and personal corruption, was not surprised to see her. What did surprise him was how direct she was. "You used Alexis. You're manipulating Ava. I know you're blackmailing both of them," she stated with barely concealed fury. Rick gave a cold smirk, brushing off the accusation at first. But when Kristina slammed a folder onto his desk, evidence of wire transfers and backroom conversations, his mood shifted. Now on the defensive, Rick demanded the return of any information she had acquired. "You have no idea what you're involving yourself in, Kristina. Hand it over," he warned, voice taut with threat. But Kristina had already decided, she wouldn't back down. Not now. Too many people she loved had already been pulled under the tide of secrets and manipulation. And if Rick thought he could intimidate her like the others, he'd soon learn she was no longer the unsure daughter trying to find her footing. She was a Corinthos through and through. Across town, at a modest townhouse once occupied by the Spencer family, Lulu Spencer was engaged in a far more personal confrontation. Having returned to Port Charles following months of recovery and soul-searching, Lulu sought to mend relationships fractured by her absence and past decisions. Chief among them was her complicated bond with Gio, her cousin by family and yet someone she had unintentionally alienated during her final days before leaving town. As she stood in the threshold of his apartment, the memories rushed back, shouted arguments, cold silences, and unfinished apologies. Gio answered the door with guarded eyes, his posture closed off, but not cold. Lulu didn't hesitate. "I owe you more than just an explanation," she began, voice faltering. "I let my pain blind me, and I hurt people I love, including you." Gio studied her, emotion flickering behind his eyes. He had built walls over the past year, walls born of betrayal, grief, and the longing for a family that had always felt just out of reach. For a moment, he didn't speak, and Lulu feared she had come too late. But finally, Gio gave a short nod and stepped aside, allowing her in. Forgiveness wouldn't come easily, not after everything they had endured separately, but the door, at least metaphorically, was now open. Back in the shadows, the earlier confrontation at the car had escalated. The figure who had halted their escape was none other than one of Rick's operatives, sent to intercept sensitive material before it could be exposed. But what Rick hadn't accounted for was Ava's preparation. Ava, always 2 steps ahead, had slipped a decoy folder into the target's car, ensuring the real documents remained safely tucked away in an encrypted server, one that Kristina now had access to. That same night, Ava sat alone in her gallery, nursing a drink and reflecting on the volatile alliances she had made to stay afloat. She had learned long ago that in Port Charles, loyalty was currency, and betrayal was just a matter of timing. She also knew that Rick was growing increasingly desperate. With Kristina on the offensive and Ava no longer easily manipulated, the walls were closing in on him. But Rick wasn't ready to fall. He summoned Alexis to a quiet meeting the next morning, mask of civility barely holding over his calculated rage. He wanted a truce, or at least the illusion of one. He offered Alexis a deal: back away from the investigation, and he would bury the information he had on Ava's dealings. But Alexis, weary from years of moral compromise, had finally chosen a side. "I'm done making excuses for people like you," she said softly, her voice steady. "If this burns, you burn with it." As the pieces moved across the chessboard of Port Charles, each character faced a reckoning. Secrets that had festered in the dark now clawed their way into daylight. Rick's power was slipping. Kristina's resolve was hardening. Lulu's past sought redemption, and Ava, never truly predictable, was waiting to see which way the tide would turn. In a town where every whispered promise hides a dagger, and every second chance demands a price, Port Charles was bracing for the storm ahead. Would you like to continue this storyline further, perhaps exploring Jason's involvement, Sunny's reaction, or a courtroom reckoning for Rick?